Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. The Republican presidential hopefuls squared off this week in the second debate of the 2016 campaign season. And while there were 11 candidates on the main stage at the Reagan Library Wednesday, most had a common goal: taking on frontrunner Donald Trump.
And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now.
The one guy that had some special interest that I know of that tried to get me to change my views on something that was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I think women all over this country heard very clearly what Mr. Trump said.
Joining the panel this week, Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, editorial board member Dorothy Rabinowitz, assistant editorial page editor James Freeman, and Washington columnist Kim Strassel. So, Kim, let's start with you. You saw the everybody trying to take on Donald Trump. Did they succeed in taking him down a peg?
Yeah, I think the unexpected benefit of having Donald Trump in this race is that he is forcing all of his rivals to really up their game, and they did. He wants this race to continue being about his personality and some bluster and blather. They came in very determined to instead highlight his weaknesses as a presidential candidate, and they scored some points. You had Fiorina highlighting his temperament, right, and also lack of knowledge on things like the 14th Amendment. You had Bush highlighting his record as a Democrat and his views in the past. You had Marco Rubio really highlighting his utter lack of knowledge on foreign policy. Well, he didn't look good there.
All right, we're going to do that. Who was the most effective, James, do you think, in terms of taking on Trump? My own view is it was Carly Fiorina, because she didn't really let him get under her skin at all. She used his words against him.
Yeah, certainly she landed a haymaker on the response to his comment about her looks. Also for herself, I think she showed an amazing knowledge, really encyclopedic knowledge of the U.S. military beyond any of the other candidates. So I think she did well. But I think basically almost the entire field did well. But I don't, except for Mr. Trump. But the blather and bluster that Kim mentioned, I think that's his standard shtick. He doesn't say a lot of things of substance. He gives the business to the other candidates, and some people may continue to want that.
Let's take a look at another exchange between Jeb Bush and Donald Trump.
Your brother and your brother's administration gave us Barack Obama because it was such a disaster those last 3 months that Abraham Lincoln couldn't have been elected.
You know what? As it relates to my brother, there's one thing I know for sure. He kept us safe. I don't know if you remember.
This was an important moment because after Jeb Bush said that, Trump said, "Do you feel safe right now?" And Scott Walker immediately jumped in and said, "Mr. Trump, you are talking about Barack Obama. His brother did keep us safe." And then later, Chris Christie, when he was talking about 9/11, in a way that could have been maudlin, actually turned out to be pretty moving and strong. At the end of it said, "And I was proud to serve with George W. Bush." And in a way, it was the party coming together not only to defend Jeb Bush against Donald Trump, but the previous president, his brother.
I agree with that, but I also thought that the earlier exchange, Dorothy, between Trump and Bush, where Bush asked Trump to apologize to his wife, was not as effective for Bush because Trump did what he often does, he refused.
Yes.
And and then Bush kind of sloughed away without really taking a firm stance. And Trump, that's what Trump does, right? You can't make a statement depending upon his response because he could say anything.
Yes, as everybody's pointed out, all lawyers know never ask a question that you don't know the answer to, and you knew that there would be no apology. But if you could backtrack for a minute to that earlier encounter with Carly Fiorina, when she said that, I believe the American people heard him.
American women,
yes, heard them. You could hear in that applause, in addition to the women, a very clear male sound, male whistles of applause. That should give pause to Donald Trump, that there was such a unanimity of response between the genders of this assault.
Kim, now if Carly Fiorina does rise in the polls after this, what are the challenges she faces going forward? And let me ask you first, what's her appeal? Why is she breaking through?
Because she's well, first of all, she's incredibly articulate and clearly an incredibly hard worker. I mean, talk about debate prep. This woman was so polished up there on stage. She knew the answer to every question, and she was very clear on her thoughts. I think one of her appeals, too, is that she is not a woman running for president. She is a strong leader running for president who happens to be a woman. And that's a new thing for the GOP, to have someone like that. And she does it very well. She looks very serious. She knows her stuff. And she's not saying to people, elect me because I'm a woman. She's saying, elect me because I'll be good in the job. And she's trying to prove that she's got all the chops to do that.
I would argue that, Dorothy, that she's going to face some challenges. She's got to defend her business record. And Donald Trump, went after her on that. You're going to see a lot more of that if she rises in the polls.
Yes, and I think that is going to be true, but I do believe that she is going to come out swinging quite effectively, because in addition to what she says, which is always very cogent and eloquent, there is the way she says it. There is that manner, that enormously impressive silence and control. No wonder we sat there calling it Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher.
All right, Dorothy, wow, Margaret, now that's a comparison.